Hey everybody, Nick here, and today we're going to do a little disassembly and maintenance on this guy right here. This is the Three Rivers Manufacturing Viator, something along those lines. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started here. I believe we're looking at T10 here in the pivot. Maybe? Yeah, T10. Nice. That's coming loose nice and easy. No thread locker or anything. Interesting. Screw is very bronzy on the inside there. Then is there something... That's weird. Look at that. It's only threading part way up the thing. All right. Well, I'm curious to see what we got going on inside here. One interesting thing to note about this particular pocket knife is that it much like the other Three Rivers stuff, it is very easy to swap different scale colors. And in fact, they sell different types of scales, different backspaces, etc. So you can swap over from this carbon fiber, which is what came to me on the knife here, but you can swap over to G10 very easily. And I'm going to go ahead and put these screws up here in these little grooves so that I can figure out which one went where, etc. My goal today, though, is not to necessarily do the swap over, because I got to be honest, I'm digging this carbon fiber and the titanium in the back here, but instead to just take this guy apart and see what it's got going on in there. Okay, whoa there, Phillips head. That's bizarre. Well, all right. So we've gone from now T10 to T6, and now there's a random Phillips head set of screws in here. I can work with it, but all right. So we pop that out here. And it looks like it just goes straight through into the titanium on the other side there. All right. This has got a lot of little screws to it, but whatever. Reversible clip, which is nice. And we should now be able to lift this guy off. Although it's going to be a little complicated given the backstrap thing here. Might need a little doing to convince it off the pin there. And I don't know whether the pin is going to come with the backstrap or what, but there we go. At the very least, the knife is mostly apart now. Oh yeah, we're popping loose. Come on. Okay, well, there's the pivot. Is this just backstrap thing not wanting to come apart? What's the deal here? There we go. All right, it's loose. So the problem there was just that these two parts here didn't want to necessarily pop open. But this shows us a number of things about the knife here. What we can see here is that, okay, this is not using the same bushing style construction that the Nomad was, which is fine. This is using phosphor bronze washers on both sides with this pivot here and that interesting screw pattern. All right, whatever. It is using a backstrap style lock to make this a slip joint sort of knife, which is not super, it's not a conventional slip joint, but it functions in a non-locking way, although with a very strong pull. So that is very similar with the Nomad version that we've seen previously. And aside from that, it's pretty straightforwardly built. Nice phosphor bronze, can't argue with that. Get this guy cleaned up a little bit. Yeah, there's a little bit of gunk built up in here. No problem. We'll make sure to do a little lubrication on the outside here. One thing to note is that the blade stock on this is very thin, which is great. It means that this guy cuts like crazy, and it does, indeed. It's nicely done in that way. I cannot argue with that whatsoever. Clean off the pivot here. Beautiful. Clean off the washer here. Beautiful. Ultimately, as I first got this guy, there was no thread lock or anything applied to the pivot, and I noticed that the pivot did come loose during disassembly, or during disassembly. Yeah, it came loose during disassembly too, but it came loose during during carry, so I'm going to add some thread locker to the pivot here. But I think we are, yeah, we're about all set here. Yeah, and indeed we see these screws are going into the titanium in the back here, which is fine. The other thing that we see is that in order to replace the scales, you need to do a full disassembly to replace the backspacer, but to swap the scales out, all you'd need to do will remove the clip and then these three screws, and then same thing, the three screws over there. It looks like the pivot doesn't actually even need to be replaced. So you could keep the entire internals of the knife as sort of one cohesive unit and still swap the scale, the outer scale pattern out. And that's great. I think that's a nice system, and I really do encourage makers who make it easy to sort of customize your knife, no matter what form that actually ends up taking. You know, sometimes it's kind of the hinderer approach where you swap it in parts like this in many ways, but sometimes, you know, I don't know. But I like that. I think it's a way to make a knife that is very production, very, feel much more custom-y. Here I'm using the 85 weight nano oil. The reason I'm doing that is because this is never going to be an, oh my God, you know, drop shot actions showpiece. That's not the way the knife is designed to work. It's not a demerit of the knife, whatsoever. And I found that these kinds of actions tend to run a little bit better when running on, and by the way, nice smooth true washes here. I'm a fan of that. But they tend to run a little bit better on a thicker grease and or oil. So that's a nice thing. This is probably going to need to go... I may end up having... Yeah, that's probably what I'm going to do here. That's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to put these guys together. Okay, no, it's popped. It's reasonable. I was thinking that I was going to have to, you know, slide the blade in like an integral or something, but I don't think that's going to need to be the case. The problem, of course, being that there is, even at the resting tension, some downward, some pressure in this direction on the blade because of this lock bar arrangement. And so, you know, I was wondering if I was going to be able to get this in after the blade has already put in. So, you know, actually, I am going to use that approach. Am I? As my pivot falls back out, there we go. What am I going to do here? This is one of those things where there are many, many branching paths. None of them are super important. Let's be real here. I'm going to go ahead while I'm thinking about it and apply a little bit of lubrication to the back strap here. This will allow this to slide along more smoothly, etc. Let's try it with the blade in place here. Is my hope here, and then I'll just go ahead and drop in the other washer here. I'm probably over-lubricating, but that's okay. That's my life. I've often wondered what makers, because I know that the makers of this, who sent it along, did I mention that? Full disclosure. This is from Three Rivers. Anyways, I know that makers will sometimes watch the channel, and I've always wondered what they think about my disassemblies. If they're sitting there, like, cringing in fear, just like, or laughing, like, what is this idiot doing to my knife? I don't know. I've often wondered these things. Like, how are you? You're drowning it, Nick. Oh, my God. Anyways. I digress. I'm feeling like... What's the best way to do this here? Just need to make sure that I slide this all the way down, that the back strap is sort of fully engaged. Yeah, okay, we're pinched down. We're good. Alrighty. So now I need to put the back spacer back into place, and I will do this. And once I do that, and actually these I don't need any thread locker on, because they are being held in place by the outer scale. So if they do come a little loose, there's not a major consequence to pay. They're not going to fall out or anything. No argument there. All right. So now that that's done, he says as he throws screws across the room. Anyways, now that that's done, I can give you a little demonstration of how this system works. This is very similar to the Pitts lock, to the one on the Nomad LTC that I've shown off. There we go. Now I'll snip the rest away shut. But the way that this works is that when this is wide open, you can see that there were those three little bumps in the blade there. When I close the knife, you can see this little spring part moves away. It lifts off. And so this titanium portion right here is under pressure. It's under tension. It's providing downward force. And then you'll see there's a little groove here in the middle that's right visible in the window here. When I slide it the rest of the way, that clicks into place. There's your half stop. And a half stop is a nice safety feature on a slip joint sort of knife, which keeps it from going from completely open to slammed shut on your fingers quickly. So then you give it a little bit more, and then it lifts back up out. You can see there's a little more gap here, and then when it comes back down here, falls back into position. So the knife is now, you know, in its safe position again. All right, so now that I've got that there, I can go ahead and I'll put on the pivot first. What the heck? Actually, I want a 10 weight. Or T10, that is, not 10 weight. Don't need this anymore, I don't think. Okay. The use of 3 different screwdrivers here is not something I'm super in love with. Screwdriver heads, that is. All right, so I put a little bit of Loctite on here using some blue Loctite. And if you're ever curious about the tools I'm using for disassembly, go ahead and check out my video on knife disassembly tools. Should make some things make a little more sense there. But okay, I have the pivot in place, and actually the knife is now fully functional. The only difference is that it just doesn't have these outer scales on there yet. I'm going to dial this back very slightly here. There we go. Perfectly centered. No blade play. Beautiful. All right, now we're just going to put the back scale on here first. I guess it's the front scale. And that just requires these 3 little bits, each of which is a T6. And I'll use a little tiny thread locker here. All righty. It's a nice, easy way to switch these scales around. Is that a 3rd screw size? I'm sorry, I'm distracted here, but is that also T10? I think that's T8. Making this a knife with 4 different kinds of screws on it. Hey, cool. Finally found something to put in the bad section. Sorry. That's actually a legit problem I have sometimes. Is like, you know, what's wrong here? You know, on a really good knife, I am bound in some ways by the format of my reviewing to find nitpicks, to find little issues. And, you know, on knives that are substantially very good, like this little guy, you know, it can occasionally feel like I'm digging. Like, you know, well, in this case, you know, oh, I don't love the logo positioning. I don't like the name. I don't know how to pronounce. It's a non-word. But, you know, it's nice that I now have something official to complain about. But there you go. Anyways, we are back to normal here. The Viator is in good-to-go condition. And hope this has been interesting. And keep an eye out for the full review coming up shortly. This guy's going back into my pocket, though, for a little bit more love. Anyways, have a good one, everybody. Bye now.